If you're just here for a quick answer, I'm happy to report that question marks are probably the easiest punctuation to use. All you need to remember is that they go at the end of every question, plain and simple. But if you're someone with a sense of wonder and curiosity, someone who isn't all business all the time and doesn't mind enjoying life a little, well, maybe you can help me to find an answer to a question that I have. Why do we have question marks? Think about it. What do question marks actually do? See, we started this series by saying that punctuation often communicates things in writing that written words by themselves can't. Punctuation is supposed to fill a unique and purposeful role, and we've already seen how some forms of punctuation do just that. Periods do a really good job of marking off boundaries. Colons do a great job of communicating meaningful connections between clauses. And we'll see later how things like commas and dashes add extra important meaning to the sentences they're in. But question marks don't do that. Let me show you what I mean with a few sample questions. All of these are questions, and they all appropriately have question marks attached to them. But we don't need question marks to know that they're questions. In every case, there's something else in the way the sentence is built that tells us we're dealing with a question. Maybe it's a question word like what or how. Maybe it's a flip-flopped subject and verb. Maybe it's a neat little tag. In each of these instances, the question mark only serves to tell us something we already know. So please tell me, why do we have them? See, in a language like Portuguese, the question mark makes a lot of sense because it's the only way to know you're dealing with a question. The only difference between saying she likes ice cream and asking whether she likes it is in the intonation, which doesn't exist in writing, obviously, so the question mark plays an important role. And in Spanish, the question mark at least has the decency to show up at the beginning of the sentence, so that it's not just repeating old news like its English counterpart. But wait, I can hear you saying, there has to be a legitimate use for question marks, right? Well, okay, you've twisted my arm. I'll confess they aren't totally useless. Question marks are good for the kind of incredulous question you might ask after a surprising statement. Something like, oh, I meant to tell you that Elizabeth raided the cookie jar last night. Elizabeth? Yeah, believe it or not. In this case, and this case only, there's nothing else in the sentence to tell us we're dealing with a question, so the question mark actually has a pretty valid role to play. But I'm not quite satisfied. I don't think this tiny area of question mark usefulness is enough to justify burdening us with it in every context. Why not just use a period? The period tells us the sentence is over, and everything else in the sentence tells us it's a question. I really don't see a need for the question mark, do you? Now, to be clear, I'm not saying question marks are bad. I think they're the most visually interesting punctuation marks we've got. If I had to pick a single punctuation mark to put on a hat, it would definitely be the question mark. No, question marks aren't bad. They're just nearly completely useless in the English language, and I don't like that we have to keep using them. Writing people are always complaining about unnecessary, redundant, and superfluous words, so why is nobody else questioning the question mark? They're as redundant and superfluous as they come. I'd like to know who's getting rich off question marks, because I can't think of any other reason we're still using them. But maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe they're harmless, purely aesthetic typographical flourishes. If that's the case, I'm fine with them. There's no shame in writing that's merely pretty. I just wish we could be honest about it. But don't tell anyone I said that. We all know that writing is a strictly instrumental tool meant for transmitting purely logical information from one person's head to the next with a minimum of pleasure and humanity. In such a world, there is no room for aesthetic flourishes. In such a world, the actual, truthful, factual world that we live in, there is no room for something as ridiculous as the question mark. So what do you say? Would you like to join me in a question mark boycott? They don't do anything periods don't, and periods use less ink, so it seems like the responsible thing to do. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?